Hey, can you, let's just text Elon real quick. He knows. He talks about no writing before 10,000 years, and then he's saying it afterwards, and he's talking about deep, deep rabbit hole. I listen to what he says. He's careful with his words. And, I mean, since we know there's been 5 interglacial periods over the last 450,000 years, this is the topic. You want to see something else? President Trump said it too.
What did he say?
He was. I have the video on my laptop. It's only 30 seconds long. If you YouTube Donald Trump on climate scientists, basically they were talking about global warming, and he basically interrupts and says, "It's going to cool for us, though, isn't it?" And the scientist is like, "Oh, that's not what the evidence shows." And he kind of laughs. He goes, "I'm not so sure you know that." And I'm like, "Of course he would know." People are like, "Oh, Donald Trump's anti-science. He's stupid." I'm like, he didn't just pull that out of his ass. He was saying
when
something.
He was the president?
Yes, this was just a few years ago. This is probably his last year of his term. I have the clip on my laptop. It's a 30-second clip, or maybe 20 seconds. He said it's going to cool first, though, before, isn't it? And I'm like, I look at what Musk is saying and this evidence of the pole shift. I think that the true data on Earth is that the Earth is cold most of the time. That right now we should be grateful that it's nice and cozy because we can live when it's warm. But I think that the data might indicate that Earth is cold more often than it's hot.
Well, that's what Randall Carlson has said. And what Randall Carlson said that really freaked me out, he goes, global warming's not scary. He goes, global cooling
is scary.
That's what's really scary. But we're so concerned with our own guilt and impact because of industrialized society and what sort of impact we're having on the climate and the earth and our air, and then there's this narrative that just gets repeated over and over and over again, this fear mongering, and everyone gets freaked out. It's not to say that we aren't polluting, we certainly are. Not to say that we shouldn't improve, we certainly should.
Sure.
Yep.
But if the fucking magnetic poles might shift and we might get hit by a giant rock from space, we might have bigger problems.
Yeah,
and we're going to be concentrating on nonsense, which is really par for the course with human beings. We're going to be concentrating on these things that we're really not going to fix over the short term. When something might happen that it makes all of it a moot point.
This is what the doomsday people say. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's the analogy is a great one that from my friend George Howard says. It's like we're sitting in a car arguing about what channel the radio's tuned to, but the car's sitting on a train track. Right, and the train's coming eventually because the climate change that we're going to get from catastrophic impact or any of these other events that inject kind of energy in from the exterior system. I mean, it just all of this current discussion pales into nothingness.
And then there's super volcanoes too, which happen all the time. Look about Yellowstone. Yellowstone's overdue. Yellowstone is a continent killer.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no safeguards in place. There's no.
We're lucky that the last essentially 10,000 years, with a couple of little blips, things like Burkle Crater, we've had really calm, pleasant weather for most of it. I mean, that's why our civilization has risen. Because if you look at the temperature record and the swings from cold to even colder and back again, I mean, it's up and down. There was all sorts of nasty things happening, more than 10,000 years ago. And ever since then, it's this pretty straight line. It's the reason that we're a civilization now. And because we think in such short-term time frames, human lifetimes, or even just a couple hundred years, we just ignore that stuff. But if you extend the timeline out far enough, these things are going to happen again, and we should probably be a bit more conscious of them. And that's the threat.
Someone must know. If there's enough smart people, they should be investigating this. I'm like, what does Elon know? What do other people know? Like, some people speculate that the reason for such brazen poor behavior involving spending with the government and the economy and the U.S. dollar and all these things like that. Some speculate, it's totally conspiracy, that like the powers that be know something's coming, and so they're just going to keep things going until then. Because the way things are being run, it makes no sense. Like,
the World Economic Forum is taking place right now at Davos, and Klaus Schwab and George Soros just pulled out of it.
They did.
What do you make of that?
They went to the bunker.
Yeah. They're digging some pretty big holes in Colorado, and there's a lot of bunkers in New Zealand, too, that are owned by billionaires. So.
There's big holes in Colorado?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's also the Cheyenne Mountain, and that's where all like the nuclear command is and stuff. And they've been From sources unknown, I can also tell you that at some point I've eyeballed this like an RFP, request for proposal, for people to develop basically drone systems. You know that the movie Prometheus, where they threw the drones up and they're in that tunnels? There was an RFP for people to develop tech like that because the government was interesting. The premise was that they wanted to be able to fight in underground cities.
Fight?
Yeah, like as in for the military. We want to be able to map terrain and have these drones that can navigate in underground space without GPS and map the environment, because it's the combat situation was fighting in underground cities.
Because there's going to be a small population of marauding people, and there's very little resources, and a small number of humans left alive, and civilization will be thrown into chaos.
Right.
Fun.
Yeah,
Fun.
a lot of a good time.